All right. Well, we're already kind of there, so let's go to the bad.
But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good. No good, really bad for you, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
Of course, the Mario Kart music, a reference to Stormy Daniels' horrifying description of Donald Trump's anatomy. Bernie Sanders' derangement syndrome exists. And it's funny because when people talk about Trump derangement syndrome, they're talking about mostly people who are horrified that there is a grotesque game show asshole putting children in concentration camps. But Bernie Sanders' derangement syndrome refers to, in particular, groups of extremely disturbed and troubled people, most of whom have been hanging around the Clinton orbit for decades, who reflect the delusion, bitterness, and entitlement so perfectly of their candidate. And the big thing about Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton was always like, with some exceptions, going back to like the first campaign, like I'm not going to lie, I find James Carville a bit charming. It's ridiculous, but he's got some charm. He's got some talent. But Dick Morris, Mark Penn, Lonnie Davis, I mean, you were talking about some of the most embarrassingly sleazy people in the history of Earth. And on and on and on. I mean, you literally cannot name all of these people. On the Hill, with Ryan Grimm filling in for Crystal Ball and Sagar, they had one of these people that, again, I remember this guy because this guy was a very active and assertive and annoying Joe Lieberman supporter in 2006. And I'm sure he's worked on some Clinton campaigns. The point is that the establishment of the Democratic Party, as exemplified by this gentleman, are just as insane and as delusional as any right-winger. And I present you Sanders' derangement syndrome in the form of Richard Goodstein on the Hill.
Let me tell you what I think happened in the primaries in 2008. Remember, she won that swath of voters from Pittsburgh down through West Virginia, right? Kentucky, Tennessee, which, with all due respect, happens to correspond with people who haven't quite accepted diversity in this country, okay?
Okay.
So Obama was black and she wasn't, and she won those voters. In 2016, Bernie did pretty well. Why?
Sure.
Because she was the black guy in a sense, right? Because those are people who were kind of intolerant of her, even though Bernie was Jewish.
Okay, can we, so...
That, by the way, is broadcasting gold, right? You just let him go.
Yeah, just let him go. I love how Sagar does like, oh, okay. Like almost like, wow, you're lining up something golden here. In the beginning of that
the approach looks promising.
yeah. All signs.
Stuck the land.
All signs signaling some great clippable content from the disturbed weirdo Hillary guy. Earlier in the interview, Goodstein first of all, he literally freaks out at Grimm for mentioning the Goldman Sachs speeches. Like that, like visibly upsets him. Yeah. Then
Goldman Sachs is also the black guy.
Yes, yeah. When you think about it, Ryan, Goldman Sachs is the black guy of this analogy. And then in the beginning, he begins by saying, and this is incredible, like, you know, we always talk about building a coalition of bringing everybody in to actually win. And he says that he was at the Women's March the day after the inauguration. And he goes, and I couldn't help thinking to myself, if you voted for Bernie Sanders, you really shouldn't be here. Like, I mean, it was like the only group of people who more likely than not, if they supported Bernie Sanders, have been like tirelessly fighting for things like reproductive justice. They shouldn't be here so that some entitled asshole who's freaked out about lack of access to the White House can like run his big mouth. Now, of course, let's just run through. This is a disastrous attitude for winning. This is exactly the horrifying elitist entitlement and disdain and contempt for people that the Clintons have. And Third, look, obviously these dynamics of race and gender play out in all political contexts. And at the same time, you are saying, let's be real here, places that still remain in the Democratic Party that are not represented by the ultra affluent, so therefore have actual like urgent material concerns, which the Clintons are enemies of, finally voted for a candidate who would do something about healthcare, about income inequality, about the actual crisis facing these things. And all this asshole has is to call them a racist through saying something mind-blowingly racist, which is, by the way, my new favorite genre, which is woke idiots stumble into the most racist comments imaginable. I saw a comment. I will not highlight who said it because it's an anonymous Twitter user, but it's just too juicy to not say. Responded to something that Anna Kasparian tweeted. Anna, everybody should be giving her unending props for all of the great work she does, and in particular, her courage and relentlessness in not indulging any bullshit in this election and not fucking around and understanding that obviously if you have some type of left perspective, obviously you support Bernie Sanders. This guy responded to her, and you know, I double checked it. This is a very performative feed. He said, "You Bernie bros are all alike. It's just hate every other candidate, hate every other candidate. And it's a shame because I used to really love you, even want to marry you."
Oh, yeah. That was
It's
so
my favorite genre of you come in with the woke and then actually say something that just anybody who's just like has any awareness of anything is like, oh, okay. That's incredibly fucking weird, dude.
Yeah. Oh, this is about you and not the subject you think you're addressing, right?
Well, you think about it, Hillary was the black guy. One of my favorite tweets I've ever seen was, and I should have pulled this one too, though again, I always feel weird about highlighting low, people who aren't in the mix, but this person was going on a tear, some fever dream and lie about Bernie being anti communities of color, which, is obviously just horrifyingly delusional and dishonest and insane to begin with. But then she was listing different people. And then she's like, and Hillary Clinton, who can be assumed to be black because of her ceaseless fighting for civil rights. What I love is it's such a weird formulation to say so-and-so is honorary whatever, which I is just, other than in stand-up, we can retire from the vernacular. But let me do an olive branch. If people, not white people, but if people of color sat down and did some type of drafting process like the old Dave Chappelle sketch, and they wanted to say that John Brown, maybe, okay? Probably not somebody who called black youth super predators and fought to put them in jail and make their families poor for most of her career. Probably not that one.
What if she carries hot sauce in her purse?
Point, counterpoint.
Sorry, I'm just going to whip out my hot sauce that I carry everywhere, especially to interviews like these ones.
Oh, Charlemagne Jagad. I know just the thing for you. Hot sauce. Please don't have any of your people mug us on the way out.
Or was it Goldwater girl for years?
She was a fucking Goldwater girl. I don't know what is wrong with people. I really, honestly, that is actually my big thing, unfortunately, with so many of these things. It's just I look at Richard Goodstein and I think he's wrong. And again, look up the Joe Lieberman clip with him. And I think he's ridiculous and everything. But there's just something at such a base level when you see him say that and you think to yourself, what's wrong with you? And then you think the other thing is, and this is just pure conjecture, but how many rooms have you been in after doing a focus group where you recommend enhanced sentencing guidelines as a talking point to a candidate? Because I would be willing to bet every single room that Richard Goodstein has ever been in, he has recommended that. You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.